Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Well, hello again. Welcome to another edition of the MemoPOD. This is your host, Peter Heck. It's great to have you aboard. I'm gonna start off today's MemoPOD by telling you that you all need to see a clip that I'm going to show in the second half of this today. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show it in the first half. This is an on-the-fly decision because it's that important. You need to see this. And so at the end of this opening segment, I'm going to roll this clip for you because I think it's going to be beneficial for you to see it. Okay? Again, this is an on-the-fly decision. It was just going to be for the paid subscribers, but that's and to hopefully entice those of you who are free subscribers. This is important content that you're getting. We'd love to have you on board to help us spread this. But on the off chance that there's some of you out there who are free subscribers who are going to stick to the end of this MemoPOD today to listen to this or to watch it, if you're watching this, but you don't have the money or you don't have the desire to invest in what we're doing, I still want you to see it. So that's that. It's settled. Okay? Now, there is a lot that we're going to do on the other side of the break that I want you to be a part of. But let me start here. Okay? Here's what I've seen in multiple places following Kamala Harris's statement recently. I've seen people say, this is a textbook case of misreading the room. Kamala Harris is guilty of misreading the room. I saw that written by more than just a handful of commentators regarding the announcement that was recently made by Kamala Harris. If you haven't seen it, what she does, I'm not going to play that video clip from you or for you. I'm not going to do that to you. But Kamala Harris was trotted out by the White House to make a statement in the last week. And you know everything that's been going on college campuses, Jewish kids being threatened in the library and told, well, you can hide in the attic. What? Are you kidding me? Those words spoken unironically? We will never forget the Holocaust. You can go hide in the attic, Jews. It's unbelievable. As the pro-Palestinian rioters, the pro-Hamas rioters on campuses surround individual students and harass them and don't let them go, on the assumption that they're Jewish. So they trot out Kamala Harris, who makes the statement that taking on hate is a national priority. And you're thinking, okay, here we go. And she then says, today, President Biden and I are announcing the country's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia. It's like they are a walking Babylon Bee headline. It's true. I've got to find this quote. I saved it. I want to find this quote it was the late Christopher Hitchens, the atheist. This is what he said, that Islamophobia is a word that was created by fascists and it's used by cowards to manipulate morons. I mean, he's an atheist. He doesn't have the moral code or moral teaching that tells him, we ought to be a little kinder to image bearers of Almighty God. But that's it. We gotta fight Islamophobia. As Islamic radicals and their allies are harassing Jews around the world, but right here in our own country. Well, who can say, another Islamic militant attack, who can say what kind of Islamophobia this is going to cause. Did you see that story? It just was out in Houston that a Jordanian national was arrested after planning an attack on Jews there in the city of Houston. Can you imagine for a second how much Islamophobia that is going to result in? It's terrifying. Yeah, I hope you're picking up on the sarcasm because I'm laying it down pretty thick about now. But misreading the room, that's what they say. She's misreading the room. Look, I believe in being as generous as possible to people, but that is even beyond that. She's not misreading the room. She's read the room just fine. She's just flipping off the room. She knows what's going on. Or we're in even worse shape than I thought we were. Just to give you an idea of how tone-deaf the statement was, the same day that the Biden administration trots Harris out to make this absurd, whatever you want to call it, declaration, an official from the maniacal Islamic butchers at Hamas, they announced their intention to commit a new Holocaust. Hamas, on television, believe this is Al Jazeera, says, we will repeat the October 7th massacre time and again, 1,000,000 times if we need to, until we end the occupation. And the reporter says, the occupation of Gaza? And Hamas official says, no, all of Israel. That is the enemy that Israel faces right now. It's not a military adversary. It's a satanic cult that is declared, and this is their quote, they love death more than Israel loves life. That's in their own charter, their own constitution. They love death more than Israel loves life. Animals who see Jews as combatants, like Jewish infants, they believe they are legal combatants to attack, legitimate military targets, savage barbarians that make Hitler look civilized. And yet, despite that, transparently obvious reality to anybody that's paying attention, the obvious reality that Hamas has no compunction, they have no hesitation about making their genocidal fervor a secret. They have no desire to hide it. Sympathy for their butchery has manifested in grotesque ways in these pro-Palestinian, anti-Semitic protests that are going on around the country. I've mentioned just a few of them. Here was a discussion that happened at Cornell University. The kosher dining hall, 104 West at Cornell, was locked down. And why? Because the Jewish students were afraid to leave their rooms after this announcement went out, because on campus discussion forums sponsored by the university, this was posted. If you see a Jewish person on campus, follow them home and slit their throats. Rats need to be eliminated from Cornell. Then there was this. The next day, Allahu Akbar. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Glory to Hamas, liberation by any means necessary. Then there was this. The genocidal fascist Zionist regime will be destroyed. Rape and kill all the Jew women before they birth more Jewish Hitlers. What? Jews are excrement on the face of the earth. No Jew civilian is innocent of genocide. That means the infants. And finally, this one. The Jewish house on Cornell is yet another literal and symbolic form of apartheid and genocide on campus. This is how badly the left misunderstands the pro-Hamas protests that are taking place. They believe and they state that genocide is taking place simply because Jews are on campus. You know, during World War II, the way Hitler got away with what he got away with was blaming the Jews for things they had absolutely... What do you think Kristallnacht was called? The Night of Broken Glass. What do you think it was called in the press? When Nazi thugs went through and destroyed Jewish businesses and murdered Jewish leaders and all of that. Kristallnacht. Do you know what the press called it in Germany? They called it a day of vengeance. Well, vengeance, that's when you get revenge on people for something that they did. The Jews hadn't done anything, but Hitler found in them a reasonable scapegoat and people bought into it. Does that not sound exactly like, well, the mere presence of this Jewish house on our campus? That is literal violence. It is apartheid. It is genocide. Meanwhile, you're saying that while carrying out, or your allies are carrying out, acts of genocide on the other side of the earth. And there's plenty of other examples that I could go into and I could share with you. It only would begin to scratch the surface of the recent explosion of anti-Semitic garbage and sewage that is flooding the streets of our cities and our college campuses in recent days. There is no such eruption of hatred towards Muslims that has been evident anywhere. Anywhere. Well, the Biden White House is all out declaring the first ever national strategy to counter Islamophobia. 60% of hate crimes last year, before all of this went on, targeted Jews. 9%, according to the ones that were reported as being motivated by a person's faith or their ethnicity, 9% targeted Muslims. You know, when I hear that demonic pronouncement that came from Hamas, that they will continue to carry out these kind of attacks until Israel is no more, and witnessing these disgusting displays of Islamist anti-Semitism that's exploding across college campuses, Islam-inspired Jew hatred around and throughout the West. And then, after seeing and hearing all of that, you go in front of the cameras and announce your commitment to fighting Islamophobia? What in the world is that? I'll tell you what it isn't. It isn't misreading the room. No, it's reading the room just fine, but choosing consciously to spit in every Jewish face that the room contains. This country desperately needs morally sane leadership, and you're not getting it from this administration. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. But now I want to show you this clip, or let you hear it. Okay, this is a gentleman who has put together kind of a primer, kind of a basic, here's how you can understand it. And I've watched it, I've seen it, he's spot on. He's exactly right about all of this, about the history of all of this. After Hamas had launched their October 7th attack, you remember Netanyahu went on television and said, "We are at war and we will destroy Hamas." Okay? Everybody knows what's coming, that Gaza is about to get pounded. The terrorists that did what they did on October 7th, they descend into the tunnels below. The tunnels that are made of the water pipes, along with the rocket launchers that they took water pipes and made out of, and then complained that Israel's depriving them of water. No, you had water, but you allowed Hamas to turn your water pipes into missile launchers. They go into these tunnels and they hide. They hide underneath the protective shield of citizens, Muslim citizens, Christian citizens, the Palestinians that they supposedly govern and care about. They hide behind them. They commit the atrocity, and then when Israel returns, brings righteous retribution, or just retribution, I should at least say, they hide behind civilians. They position rocket launchers in cemeteries, outside of mosques, in the parking lot of hospitals. They even put rocket launchers on the inside of a playground for elementary students. So when Israel goes and destroys the missile sites, what do the Palestinian authorities then say? Israel's attacking our elementary schools. Israel's attacking our hospitals. Israel's attacking our cemeteries and our holy places. This is oppression. This is the nature of Hamas. This is who and what they are. Now, Is that all twisted? Is all of that uninformed? Is all of that a misinterpretation, misrepresenting? Am I part of the Zionist crowd? Here's what you can do. You can ask yourself this question. I mean, there's the obvious one. Israel drops leaflets. Israel makes announcements. If you are a Gazan civilian, you need to get out of Gaza. Nobody else in war announces, we're about to strike, take cover. Nobody does that. It's not a great war strategy. But Israel is attempting to demonstrate to the world that they are not targeting civilians. So the Gazans that want to leave, first of all, Hamas doesn't want them to leave, shoots some in the street who tried to leave. But they want to leave, and they're not allowed into any of the neighboring Muslim countries, not in Jordan, not in Egypt. And why is that? That's the big question that everybody's been asking. Now, some people have answered that in their heads, and they said, well, because Egypt and Jordan, because they're Muslims, they want Israel to look bad. So they're not letting the refugees flee, so they have to stay, and then they get killed as collateral damage in Israel's attack, and then that gives more bad publicity to Israel. Some people have suggested that, and maybe there's some truth to that. But there is a deeper reason why Egypt and Jordan don't want Palestinian refugees. Oh, it's a burden on the social fabric. No. That's not why. This is a great explanation as to why. Pay attention.
Why aren't more Arab countries in the Middle East taking in Palestinian refugees? The onset of a renewed war between Israel and Hamas has led to fears that millions of Palestinian people living in the Gaza Strip may be forced to become refugees. But despite the fact that Gaza shares a border with Egypt, the Egyptian government almost immediately ruled out any possibility of accepting Palestinian refugees. In fact, Egypt is currently constructing an even larger border wall with Gaza than the one it currently has in place. Now, many outside observers have asked why Egypt, a majority Arab and Islamic nation, would turn away the Palestinian people. And of course, many have pointed out that it may serve the political interests of many Arab nations to refuse to accept Palestinian refugees because it allows them to then blame Israel for any sort of humanitarian crisis that unfolds. But the thing is, historically, many Arab nations have accepted Palestinian refugees, and that may be why Egypt doesn't want to now. For example, in 1991, the Kuwaiti government actually expelled nearly 300,000 Palestinians in the aftermath of the First Gulf War, and this represented an astonishing 18% of Kuwait's entire population. So what was the reason? Well, the Palestinian Liberation Organization had actually supported Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait a year earlier. And this support only grew after Iraq began attacking Israel with rockets throughout the war. After Kuwait's liberation, the government considered much of the Palestinian community to be complicit in the Iraqi occupation of their country. And in response, nearly all Palestinians were deported in just a few months. And this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Decades earlier, the Palestinian groups operating in Jordan had come to openly call for the overthrow of Jordan's monarchy in the aftermath of the Six-Day War. At the time, the PLO maintained its own separate army on Jordanian soil and used that armed force to sow chaos. Armed gangs of PLO militants drove around the capital of Amman, robbing families and businesses in the name of collecting financial assistance for the ongoing war of attrition against Israel. When members of the Jordanian police and army tried to defend their citizens from these attacks, they were attacked and killed. The Palestinian political network operated as a state within a state, with militants repeatedly using Jordan to launch rockets into Israel. The Marxist-Leninist Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine even went so far as to hijack multiple planes, diverting the flights to a Palestinian-controlled airfield in Jordan, where the passengers were held hostage. By September 1970, the Jordanian army had finally had enough. A full-scale war with the PLO broke out, and after 10 months of fighting, the Palestinians were driven out of the country. Yet, as a parting gift, a Palestinian terrorist group known as Black September assassinated the Jordanian prime minister. Sadly, the story doesn't end there, because the PLO then moved into Lebanon, where they allied themselves with Marxist and socialist movements that were seeking to overthrow Lebanon's conservative Maronite Christian government. The presence of thousands of Palestinian militants flooding into the country completely destabilized Lebanon and plunged the entire nation into chaos. Less than 4 years after the PLO was expelled from Jordan, Lebanon found itself in the middle of one of the most bloody and chaotic civil wars in Middle Eastern history, from which it has never fully recovered. In short, Palestinian organizations have not just attacked Israel. They have sowed unrest in many of the neighboring Arab and Muslim countries as well, and this has led those governments to the conclusion that allowing for mass immigration or even just refugee camp resettlement within their borders would lead to domestic unrest for their own countries. And this, of course, only exacerbates the humanitarian crisis for those Palestinian non-combatants caught in the middle. The problem is, as long as terrorist organizations like Hamas and others are elected to represent the Palestinian people, their plight will most likely continue, as neither Israel nor apparently the surrounding Arab nations want to see their own populations threatened by terrorist groups.
I will say it before, because I'll say it again. Not everyone in Palestine agrees with Hamas. I've seen some heartbreaking videos. Just saw one yesterday of people a guy, he was standing up on the top of the building and he was screaming from the top of his lungs that they have not chosen Hamas. Please, world, please, America, free us from Hamas. There are a lot of people living in Gaza that do not want Hamas calling the shots. They want to live at peace. It's important to understand, however, those people are being locked in the positions where they are. And I feel a great deal of sympathy for them, but they're being locked there, they're being held there, they are being prevented from seeking safety and security and peace by one group of people. And it isn't Israel. It is Hamas. And as long as they persist, there will be no peace in that part of the world. None. Important thing to keep in mind, especially as you have conversations with others who may not be as informed as you. That's why I'm thankful that you're here and we can be informed together. I will say that I've got to let those of you who are free subscribers go now. But when we return, for those of you who are paid subscribers, we've been constantly told, starting in 2020, that the adults were back in charge. The Trump years, we don't know what that was, but now the adults are back in charge. Obviously, with what you see happening to our economy, it's difficult to say the adults are in charge. Obviously, when you see what's happening with crises around the world, it's difficult to say that the adults are in charge. I have a story for you. We're going to talk about something after the break that to me is one of the funniest things to juxtapose against the idea that is bantered about, that is suggested by Biden administration apologists and those on the left, that the adults are in charge. Wait until you hear this story. Free subscribers, I gotta say goodbye unless you want to just sign up and give us a shot. Do the cheaper option, $100 a year, and boom, you're good through pretty much Christmas time next year. Do it. Just pull the trigger right now. It'll be a great Christmas gift for yourself or for a friend. And you can gift a subscription to somebody as well and let them get this information if you think it'd be beneficial. But you have got to hear this story if you are under the impression that we will soon be delivered from all immaturity because the adults are in charge. Free subscribers, I'll see you next week for more MemoPOD. Paid subscribers, hang tight.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonigal's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.